Right, so I'm just going to do a quick refresher on materials, just at a minimum level to do what you need for the as existing drawings. And so remember, the first assignment now, all you need to show is the as existing plans, sections and a few perspectives of the interior. And so the number of perspectives is still listed in the brief. And you can see here I've got a fairly basic floor plan. I've added in more than you need as well. I've put in the other buildings just because I'm actually going to go ahead and do the whole college as I do all of this. But you just need to have blocks B and C. But then you can see this floor plan looks a little bit over-complicated, and there's a lot there that I wouldn't want to show if I was going to give this floor plan to someone else. And so I'll put a few things in for the view setup as well as I do the materials. So I'm going to start by duplicating. So if you've had me before for any subjects, you'd be used to doing this. I'll probably do it more than most people. Yes, it's been recorded, yeah. So if you haven't done it recently, right click on any view to go to duplicate view. And then if you're not sure which option to use there, duplicate with detailing is probably the best all-round option. And so I've got there ROG ground floor, or GF, building C, copy 1, which I'll rename and call the same thing but with print at the end. So I know this is the version set up for printing. And right away, just to clean it up, I'm going to hide a lot of things. So I'm going to select one of the reference planes, right click, hide in view, category. Straight away the plan looks a lot cleaner. The shortcut for that's VH. Okay, so I'll get my my elevation views out of the way as well, but I'll use the shortcut this time, VH, which does the same thing, hide by category. And then I just want to show the part of the plan that I want to see in my print, so I'm going to turn on the crop region down on the view control bar. You have the option for that. And that's really useful in any view that you're going to print to have it cropped. And then I can simply adjust that border to include only the parts of block C and B and C that I want shown. So that might be enough for now. There we go. Okay, so as I add more, I'll probably add in make that crop region bigger, show more of block C, but that's all I have for now, so that's all I want to show. And it's a good idea when you're adjusting that crop region to bring it in as close as you can. So here, even though it's not affecting the drawing, I'm going to bring it down at the top and across there on the left, because the size of the crop region here is the size when you put it onto the sheet. So the smaller that is, the easier it is to work with. And then the section views, I do want to show, so I'm going to bring them across and just make them a bit neater. So all of these things you can do while you're thinking about your material setup, just to get things nice and neat. Okay, so then the main thing I want to do though is set the walls and the other elements to display the way I want them to for an as existing drawing. So I'm going to select one wall and then go to edit type. And so how do you show existing walls in floor plan? What colour? Dark black, yeah, so that's right. So you can see there when I've selected the wall, gone to edit type, you have then the coarse scale fill pattern and fill colour, which is really part of materials. It's not grouped in with the material, but it does give it the display that you can see there. That's why we have grey walls. So I'm going to change that colour there to black. And then OK. And you'll see then most of the walls are going to change right away because they're all generic 300mm walls. The other walls that haven't changed I need to select separately, and again edit type and just change the colour there. So every different kind of wall you'll need to do this change to the coarse fill colour, and if it doesn't show the colour, check that it's got solid fill set for the fill pattern. So there we are. So we've got nice black walls for everything except actually there's another wall type there, and get that door over. So again, just changing the colour there. Right, so much cleaner already. And another thing I can do there just to make it tidier again is to hide the crop region. So that's pretty close to the way we'd want it showing the walls in the plan view. Oh, just with the option on the view control bar, you've got show crop region and hide. Right, so I think of that along with materials, but it's really not done with the materials. It's a separate thing in the wall. But it's good to remember that you have that coarse scale option there in graphics, and remember that it only affects coarse views. So here it's set to coarse in the view. If I go to medium or fine, then it uses the material colour. So I'm changing to that, and then if I select one of these walls, go to edit type, and then I've got to click, just moving it over so we can see the wall, I've got to click edit structure to see the material. And so these walls are using that material finish, and so I'm going to browse there, and you'll see then the reason it's white is because of the shading colour here. So that's where it's a little bit confusing, because you have the option of setting this to be a single colour as well, and so we might want this to be black in plan, but if you do, then it's not a good idea to change this colour. This colour here, I'll just set to a random colour so it stands out, so I'll just make it a green or something. Okay, you will see it in plan, so I'm going to click OK, and then change this option down here to shaded. And now you can see the green colour come up in the walls. So that's when you see the shading colour in something that's being cut. So back into the wall type, it's the finished material that I've adjusted. And I don't particularly want that to show green. And I'll show you then what it would look like in 3D, so you can get an idea. So again, on the outside now, all of those walls appear green. And I probably don't want that either. So I'm going to go back and change that material. And so here I'm going to the Manage tab, and I'm just going to go straight to materials there, so I don't have to keep going through the wall each time. So there's my finished material, and I'll change it back to close to white, but not quite. So I'm just going to go for sort of an off-white. And so I don't have to go out of this dialog box, I'm just going to press apply, and now we can see the change. So you generally use that shading colour to set the surface colour of things like walls and the other things that the material's used for. So then how do you get the plan colour to show differently? So the one set for print. Okay, so it's fine if you're in coarse, you can use that coarse colour that's built into the wall. But in your fine views, which you'll need to use quite often, then you're going to get the shaded colour. But what you can do again is, sorry, just go straight to the materials. What you can do instead of changing the shading colour, you can set a cut pattern. So every material has a surface and a cut pattern. The surface pattern is what shows on the outside, and the cut pattern is what shows when it's being cut in a plan or a section. And so you can set the cut pattern to solid fill, and set that colour to black. So that way, no matter what, when it's cut, it's going to show black, and it'll override the shading colour. And it's one of those things, again, that's not all that obvious at first in Revit, that you have that choice. And so now, back in my 3D view, you can see it's still using the shading colour for the outside. But an interesting thing there, if I cut this, so I'm going to maybe remind you, if you haven't done this for a while, to cut in 3D, you can use the section box. So turn that on, and I'll cut through part of this building. Okay, and then you can see the inside of the wall is black as well. So that's a pretty good setup, because it's clear then when something's being cut. And I'll just bring that across a little bit more. Alright, so back into my... Well, actually, so I'll do the rest in this view. I might hide that section box, so I'm just going to select it, right-click, hide in view, elements. And that makes it a bit cleaner. And I've got here the view still set to the default view, so as well I'll rename that view, because it's good to leave the default view with the default settings. And so now I might want to change the other aspects of that material. We're not really going to do a lot because it's existing, so you don't want to make it too complex. So again, I'll just go through the Manage tab to go to Materials. I just want to remind you of the process you use basically to work with materials in Revit. And so I've been adjusting the finished material because I'm happy for that to be the default material that's used by a lot of my elements. Do you remember what you need to do if you want to make a new material? What the best way? Exactly, yeah, duplicate it here on the left. So I just want to make that clear, and just so you know, if you haven't had a look at the section down here, you might have wondered if there's an option to make a new material from scratch. And there is. You've got down here an option to do that. But it's a lot more work because you have to then go and put all the properties in. Whereas if you duplicate an existing material, a lot of that's already done for you. But the other thing then that you might realise is that this list here is your project list. So those are the materials in this project only. And so every project that I start in Revit is going to have its own finished material. So by changing it here, I'm not affecting other projects. You don't have to worry about changing things in your library that are going to affect different files that you're working on. By changing things in this list on the left, it's only affecting the current project. So that can hopefully make things a bit clearer. And by duplicating here and making a new material, so let's say I want one for the roof that's based on what I've used for the walls. I'll call it finish roof. So that's only going to be available in this project. And if you're wondering then, well, can I transfer materials into other project files? You can, but it's painful. It's not a simple thing. So if you work in a firm with a CAD manager, talk to them about that and you'll realise why it's not a simple thing. You can do it, but I'm not going to show you how because it's complicated. So, so just think about that. If you know that you've got a bunch of standard materials that you're going to use repeatedly in lots of projects, the best way to make them available in future projects is to make a template. So you might have seen in Revit you can make your own template files and use them to start new projects. And that's what they do in most big firms that use Revit. They'll have a template set up with all the materials in here that they use in those projects. So that's all to make the next part hopefully a bit clearer still, because the appearance is totally different the way it works. Firstly, you've got this part here where you can see, when you go to the Appearance tab, you see that number there. Do you know what that number means above the hand? Yeah, exactly. That's right. There's 3 other materials using this appearance. So in the list here, it doesn't tell us what they are, unfortunately, so we'd have to go searching for them. You can get it to tell you, but often you just need to go searching. And so that's an extra level of complexity that does make things easier for big projects, but when you're working on smaller projects like this, really just creates extra work for you. And so you just need to remember that the appearance is a separate thing to the material, which is really tied with the Graphics tab. That appearance thing has its own name, linen white, and like you're saying, it's being used by others, like this wall finish is using it, we know that, and then there would be others as well using that same appearance. So what I like to do is, when you want to make changes, replace this with a new material so that it only affects the one that you've got selected. So when you right click on that tab, another option is to choose duplicate, and that's similar to what I did on the left. It'll create a unique appearance for this material based on the one that's already there. And this option below, duplicate as generic, is actually a really useful option because you've got here wall paint, and that's actually a preset template. And so notice it's only got a few options available. And so for wall paint, you just set the finish and the application and the colour. And that then generates a paint material. If you have a look at some of the others, let's look at this one, earth, you can see you have a lot more properties. So you might have wondered why sometimes you get certain properties and then for different materials you have different options available or different properties. It's all to do with the template that the person who created the material has used when they first create it. So that's fine if you're happy with a wall paint material, but say you want to turn it into a transparent material based on the colour that you've got for the wall paint. Well, then you can duplicate as generic, and it will give you all those properties that you saw there for, say, that earth material, things like transparency and if you want it to glow or anything like that. So generic materials basically give you all the options. The others have more limited options. So anyhow, I'm going to use the other option, replace, and if you're not sure about the duplicating, just use replace. And that also will give you the Autodesk render material library, which is a great resource they give you with any Autodesk program nowadays. Clicking here on the left, you've got the Autodesk physical assets. Don't use them unless you're doing energy analysis, environmental analysis and things like that, which you can do. It's a good feature in Revit, which we've never used in here, but I use it for my own work. So if you ever find yourself doing that, you've got these physical materials. But if you're just using it for graphics and rendering and drawing your plans, the appearance library is bigger. It's the one at the bottom. Click on the little arrow and you have all the different subfolders. So I can then go to roofing and find something close to what you want, which is slate from memory. So, oh no, sorry, they changed it to, they did replace it. It was slate originally, and they've replaced it with Colorbond. That's right. So you've got, unfortunately, mainly American materials, and they don't seem to use corrugated iron or custom orb as much as we do. So you've got no material that's equivalent to that. In metal, I think there are things that are close. So I'm going to show you later how to make a Colorbond material, but to begin with, just choose something that is similar. And I have found some that are pretty close before. I just don't remember where. One of these metal folders. Let's just go for one of the patterned ones. I can change it. Diamond plate will do. Yep. Yes, that's right. And that's the main reason I'm showing it to you. So, because for your design work especially, you'll need to set the render materials. And so you just need to be comfortable with that process of duplicating and then replacing to get that. Because like I said, it's a great resource to have all of those materials given to you for free. Yeah, no, they do. Yeah, you just got to get, so it's the appearance folder you need to open, and that's the thing, because they want you, they're trying to push you to use that physical library. So that's the one it starts with, but the appearance library has a lot more. And often it's still just a starting point. So here we've got that patterned metal that I've chosen, and I'll put it to a higher quality display here so you can see hopefully what that pattern looks like. It's a bit hard to see because it's really small. But I'm going to click on the relief pattern there just to expand it. There we go. And you can see then what it's based on. It's an image of checker plate, or not checker plate, but similar pattern. And so it's a PNG file. If you click browse there, then you can change it to any other image file. And I do have on the P drive a file that I've made for corrugated. So if I just browse to P, and then interior design and material images. Okay, so I'm just giving it a minute to wake up. There we are, and so here you can see there are actually a few. Okay, so there are some up here that are pretty close, but if you go down and find the one called corrugated, or sorry, core, actually they're both fine. Corrugated is the one I made first, but then this one here, core bump, which is a JPEG, and I might just show you a better view of that. So once you see it, you can probably make your own. It's just a gradient, up and down, up and down. So you can do that in Photoshop. Okay, so that will set the bumps in this material. Like I said, later I'll show you how you can make an even more realistic corrugated material, but this is pretty close for now. Yeah, material images, yep, that's right. Yeah. So you should see it in the interior design folder, and you can copy it if you can fit it. It's big though. This is one of my own material library folders, and it is fairly large. These are the biggest things I have to back up on my network, these folders of materials that I've got. Apart from my videos are bigger, but still that's big, 84 gig. So there's a lot of images in there, but you're welcome to grab that. There's a stack of material resources there you can use. Okay, so I've got this image, but notice it's hard to see the pattern there. Any idea why it's still really small? Oh yeah, it does. Yeah, it took a little while, but it's finished now. So it tells you up here it's updating if it's still changing it. But that's right, the size. So to change the size, you need to click on the swatch, not the file name. So here, when you click on the swatch, then you will see the size. Up here it tells me it is 10 mil. So that's not really a good size for an image like this. And do you remember how to set the size of a image in Revit? No? Okay, so looking at something like this, it's a really easy thing to work out visually. Just think how big it would be in the real world. And so if this was a piece of corrugated iron or custom orb profile, how big would that piece of metal be between those dimensions there? Yeah, that's not far off actually, yeah. So well, how big, what's the distance between the ridges in custom orb? Do you know, have you looked at the profile? It's the sort of thing when you look in the Life Arts catalogue, you'll see it. Yeah, you're not far up, yeah. In reality, it's about it's 76 mil, I think, high, and then double that the other way. So it's about 150 mil or something like that between each of these white ridges. So if we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, let's say 4.5 ridges, or let's just say 5, by 150 gives us 750. Now, what you should be looking for here is a size that you can type in. And this is where it helps if you know some other Autodesk programs, because then you can tell when Revit is playing up. Here I can see all these things about UV scale and UV size and UV tile and things like that. I know that from 3ds Max is how it sometimes can come up, but in Revit it should never come up like this. It's actually a bug in the program. It's giving us the wrong properties. And so if you see this, if you don't see the size in millimetres, and that's what you're looking to change, the trick there is just click Done, click OK, get out of it, come back in, and go back to where you were. Here we are, click on the swatch again, and now notice how it's completely different. It's just a bug. that they haven't fixed for a few releases. So easy to fix though. Once you go out and then go back in once, it should be right from then on. And so now I want the height to be 750. Okay, so I can see that dimension on the side now, and that's all I want. So done, and notice how then I can see my ridges. Okay, so they're not perfect bumps, it's not changing the geometry, but when it renders it will show us the look of custom orb. And that is also that's a vertical pattern, also a horizontal pattern. I want it to be vertical. So we're going to change the angle here to 90. Got to rotate it. Done. And again there we can see the change. And then going back to graphics, I'll just do one little thing on the surface pattern. So I've shown you the cut pattern, what that does. So that's a simple thing, because luckily with cut patterns you don't have many choices. It's set to drafting, and so you don't need to remember what to do there. You just need to choose the pattern you want in the list. But the surface pattern, you have a choice between drafting and model. So the tip I'm going to give you there is just use model every time. Don't use drafting for surface patterns. Okay, and the reason is drafting patterns are symbols. So they're a graphical representation of the material, they're not a drawing of the material. Right, so for example, brickwork, it's got the dashed lines to show you the symbol for bricks, so people when they see it in plan know that it's that material, but it's not a drawing of some bricks. When you go to model and look at the brickwork pattern there, it is a drawing of brickwork in elevation. And that's the difference. Model patterns are a drawing of the material. And that's what you want to see on the surface, usually. I don't even know why they give you that drafting option, to be honest. Okay, so I just find it's easier to remember those things if you know why you're doing it. So, again, hopefully that will remind you that you use model for surface patterns. And then I just want lines, parallel lines for my roofing. So for here, I just want the lines to go along my roof, parallel. And going down through the list there, I can't see the one I want. I could use 75mm vertical, but I want them to be a bit further apart because it's a big building. And there's 150mm horizontal, but no 150mm vertical. So it's a good opportunity just to show you how to make a pattern if you haven't done this before. Click on the New button, and you have two options, Simple and Custom. Custom, you need to use a pat file. So if you're good with AutoCAD and you know about creating your own hatch patterns, you can use those in Revit as well. When you go to import here, it wants a pat file. Okay, so that means you can, if you use AutoCAD a lot, you would know about making and working with different hatch patterns, and you can import from the massive resource of AutoCAD hatch patterns. There are millions and millions of free ones you can download on the internet to get almost any pattern you can think of. Same as Illustrator actually uses it as well. But I don't want custom, just want to show you you have that option. I want simple. So simple is just cross-hatching. Normal cross-hatching the way you draft. So either parallel lines or cross-hatched lines, one or the other. So I'll give a name, we'll call it 150mm vertical. The line spacing, I'll make exactly that, 150. And then the angle, that's it. That's my pattern. If you want it to be double lines, you use crosshatch, and then you give a second spacing. That easy. So simple patterns shouldn't be a problem for you. And again, just remember it's a model pattern, so the size shouldn't be a problem either because it's the real world size. It's not scaled or anything like that. It is just the size it would be in real life. So remember I was saying between the ridges we'd have about 150mm. It's not exactly that, but that's what we're saying it is. And so that's how far I want my lines to be along the roof there. Okay, so there's my new pattern, and I can use that with any other material as well. And OK, and then OK again. Now I can choose any roof, go to Edit Type, Edit, browse for the material, and just check Finish Roof. So notice all my roofs change, because they're all using that finished roof. They're all the same kind of roof. So I don't need to go and choose each roof and set the material. But then also, it's got it on the underside with those lines because I set it as a surface pattern, the vertical parallel lines. Now that's okay because we shouldn't see the inside of the roof anyway. If we see that, we've got a problem. Because you'll have a ceiling to block the view of that in the interiors, in your perspectives. In the section, you won't see it either because it'll just be cut. Maybe you'll see it actually sometimes on the underside in situations like this, but you should really have a wall coming up to block that in the end. But then finally, just to get back to where I started, you can see that it's not showing with the black pattern in section. Anyone want to be brave and guess why? There's two things really. Yeah, that's part of the reason. So yeah, it's not in the material. So here, the view's on coarse. If I go to fine, it is going to be black because I've set black for the cut pattern for that finished roof material. So it's black there, but because it was in coarse, it's showing the coarse pattern that's set to this roof type. Look, honestly, I think the way it's structured is a bit bonkers. That's the only way I can describe it, but it's just the way Revit is. And there is a logic to it. It's just the logic of object-based programming, not the logic of design. So you again just need to set the coarse fill pattern, which is what I'm doing here, to solid, and make sure the coarse fill colour is black. Luckily I've only got one roof type that I'm using, and so it's just a one-step thing. So I know all those things can be a little bit tricky to take in if you haven't applied them and used them for a little while, but it will all make sense once you've done it a few times if you haven't done that recently, and you should be able to get or manage your materials fairly well. And remember, for the existing project, they don't need to be detailed, great-looking materials. You just need to be able to manage them so that when you change, I mean, the common issue, if you change something and you see other things changing that you don't mean to be changing, it's an issue either with you not forgetting to duplicate the material, or sometimes forgetting to duplicate the wall type or the type of the object you're working on. So maybe I should just quickly show you the other one. We've done the walls and the roofs. The floor is the other one. So I'll just quickly set that just to maybe reinforce it. If I go to Edit Type, again you can see the coarse scale, fill, pattern and colour. The colour's okay, but the pattern's not there, so I'll choose solid for that. Then the structure, again we're keeping it simple, it's existing, so you don't want to show lots of detail, so one material is enough. And I'm just going to use the same finished material that I used for the walls. If you want that to show differently in a 3D view, you might want the floor to show something other than that off-white, then you could duplicate the material here to make it different to the walls. But for now, I can just leave it as the same material as the walls. Click OK, 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 and all my floors change. Oh, and there's a floor that's too low, but I'll leave that, it's fine. Okay, so the materials for this first project should be pretty straightforward, but it's a good chance just to make sure you're comfortable managing your materials and get a good setup that'll prepare you for your proposed design, where you'll have a lot of your own materials and you've really got to be on top of the material management and also the elements that you're working with. So maybe just to finish off, the things I've been showing you, the roof, the walls and the floors. Do you remember what they're all called? What sort of family they are? And if you're not sure, you can always select one, go to edit type, it tells you at the top. They're system families. Okay, so system families, they don't all work in the same way, but they work usually in a similar way in that you duplicate them to make a new kind of that element. The ones I haven't shown you, the windows, they're not system families. And so you can still assign the same materials to them. When you go to edit type here, you'll see it does have the option to change the materials. But if I duplicate this window, it's not going to let me make a totally different kind of window. It's just going to let me make a different size for this kind of window or this window family. So you just want to get used to thinking about those different kinds of elements differently, because system families are managed fundamentally in a different way to your other families. Again, it's one of those technical things in Revit that's based on the way the software is programmed, rather than anything to do with the way you design or really build these things. But again, the best way to make that clearer is just to get in and start using it, and try to make your own window types, make your own wall types, and see what the difference is. So anyhow, hopefully that'll give you enough though to set those main materials. So I'll finish that video there because I want to do the other things anyway afterwards, the roofs.